right. We're taking all the best old school wisdom and blending it with the top new school methods to bring you the optimal coaching strategies. This is the 80-20 Baseball Podcast with Coach Bo.
Welcome, everyone. Awesome to be here with all of you this week. Our weekly get-together, episode 250. Big milestone for this podcast, episode 250. And we'll be hitting our 5th anniversary in just a few months. So 250 episodes later, I still get pumped up to come on here. I love the feedback that I continue to get. Got a couple great emails this week from listeners telling me how much the podcast is helping them. And we got some big plans for 80-20 baseball moving forward. Over the course of the next year, we're going to continue having quality coaches on the show and also some more announcements in the near future that I'm very excited about. With that said, let's get into today's episode where we are trying to go from new coaches to good coaches, or from good coaches to great coaches, depending on where you're at on your coaching journey. In my hand, I'm holding Coach Sarancic's new book. Adam Sarancic has been on this podcast multiple times. I plan on having him come back on the show before the spring season. He just came out with a new book titled Teacher, Role Model, Mentor, Lessons Learned from a Lifetime in Coaching. We got the 80-20 baseball representing on the back. Before the book went to print, he sent me a PDF copy of the book. And after reading the book, it was pretty easy to share a recommendation for the book that Coach Sarancic put on the back cover and on the inside. Good stuff. Sarancic is spelled Sarancik. He's got some good books. You can get those on Amazon. I don't get anything for plugging this except a nice hardcover copy of the book, which is pretty awesome. All right, today's topic, the 80-20 rule, the 80-20 principle, but a different look at it. Before we dive into that, most all of you know I'm a Dodger fan, have been since I was a tiny tot. But more than anything, I'm a baseball fan. I love great players. I love great teams. I love great coaches. I love watching the game played the right way. Hustle, diving for balls, battling at the plate, competing on the mound, calculated aggressiveness on the base path. So baseball is near and dear, but if time's tight, and like most of you, time seems to always be tight, I do my best to keep up with the Dodgers. And here's a player I think it would be great for all your shortstops to go watch play the game. All your middle infielders, your third baseman. This is the shortstop who saved more runs over the last 5 years. If I were to give you a list of players to guess from, who would you choose? Would you choose Corey Seager, Francisco Lindor, Xander Bogaerts, Dansby Swanson? How about Trey Turner? How about Carlos Correa? How about Willie Adames? How about J.P. Crawford? How about none of those guys? Would you believe the shortstop, a premium position, if not the second most premium position, if we put pitcher to the side, on defense in all of baseball, catcher being number one? How many of you would have guessed, and yes, this guy's on the Dodgers, and you're thinking, the Dodgers? Well, Mookie Betts hasn't really played much shortstop, and now he's back in right field. Who could it be? What if I told you Miguel Rojas has saved more defensive runs over the last 5 years out of all the shortstops in the major leagues? Now, what makes him a great player for kids to watch is, one, yes, he's athletic. Of course, he's a heck of a ball player, but he's not a gigantic player whose genetics are freakishly different. Like Aaron Judge is just an amazing player, of course, and has been all season. He's been on another level. He's on another planet, but he's a massive dude. And so copying him or having Little League players copy him, it's a little bit of a stretch. But a guy like Miguel Rojas, who's not that big, isn't super muscular, his skill set would translate and transfer down to the Little League level, what he does on the field. So Miguel Rojas would be a great player to go on YouTube or search on X. You can now search videos on X for Miguel Rojas and show those videos to your kid, your kids, your players. He is fun to watch. And I really wasn't that familiar with him until he came to the Dodgers, but oh my. There are videos of him training. He trains out in Florida. You can watch those. He's definitely a dude to show to your young kids how to play middle infield, how to play the game of baseball. So Miguel Rojas, man, oh man, fun to watch play the game, plays the game the right way. Speaking of watching videos, I'm coaching a 2nd and 3rd grade volleyball team. I know it's the big time, the YMCA. So my kid is playing volleyball, and of course I'm there to support and get involved and help be a coach. That's why we all do what we're doing. Now there's 3 coaches helping out, and one of the coaches recommended to the players after last week's practice, or I should say gave them homework, said, go watch 5 minutes of a volleyball match. Go watch 5 minutes on video, or if there's something live in your area, go watch a volleyball match, or just watch 5 minutes on YouTube or whatnot of a volleyball match. I think that's a great way to do it. Now, going to a match or going to a baseball game is better because the players can see the whole field rather than just what the camera has on the screen. So the lens is much bigger when we're using our own eyes for the most part rather than watching a game on TV, which typically never shows the whole field. So keep that in mind as we move forward. Now, switching gears to our meat and potato topic, the 80-20 rule, as we all know it, is 20% of inputs bring us approximately 80% of our results. It's not an exact number, but it holds true for the most part. It holds fairly true across the board for pretty much everything in life. Now, while most of us are familiar with kind of that general definition or explanation of the 80-20 principle, the 80-20 rule, now what we can do to expand upon the 80-20 principle and really help guide us is to flip the ratio around, use it to appropriately allocate our practice time. 80% of our practice time should be spent on the core things. 80%. Now, some practices that may be 70, maybe 60. Some practices it might be 90% or 100%. But it's a good idea to average about 80% of our practice time throughout the season, having it spent on the 20%, the 10%, the 30% of key vital items hitting for those levels that have pitching, the most common defensive plays, when it's player pitch, the catching position, base running in those common situations, on defense, fly balls and ground balls, and making accurate throws. So here's my main message. At the end of the season, when you look back at your practice time, when we look back at our practice time and how we spent our practice time in terms of a pie chart, did we spend 80% of our practice time throughout the season on the big needle movers, the things that happen the most often in the games? And so the 80-20 principle is, hey, 20% of the things you do bring you 80% of your results, give or take. Okay, let's flip that around now and say 80% of our practice time throughout the season, 80% of our practice time on average should be spent on those 20% of key items. Again, it's not an exact number, but I think over the course of the season, 80% of our practice time should be spent on those big needle movers, those key things, those things that happen early and often in baseball games. And the last thing I'll say here is, be careful to blindly follow the message from somebody on TV or a coach that you may follow online. Be careful to blindly follow their message that a particular play being the reason a team won. For example, in the Little League World Series just a few weeks ago, Florida, Lake Mary did not win the Little League World Series on a bunt. That's how it went down on the last play. There were hundreds and hundreds, if not 1,000 plus at-bats on their all-star journey that they had to win. The game ended on a bunt, but that was one play. And of course, a big one to win the game, but it was one of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of at-bats. Just in the Southeast Regional Tournament and the Little League World Series, they played 10 games. So that's between 300 and 400 at-bats just in the Regional and the Little League World Series. So when thinking about the things on the field during the games, the most impactful, the events, the actions, the plays that are the biggest needle movers, be careful when you hear people point out how the team won. They won on a bunt. I heard that a lot a few weeks ago when Lake Mary won the Little League World Series. But a better way to assess it would be, all right, out of their 1,000-ish at-bats on the team's all-star journey, how many were successful bunts? And how many were base hits or doubles or walks? And how much did their awesome base running impact the scoreboard? How much was it their pitching, their catcher, the defense, the outfield, their throws, their knowledge of the game. So you can see where I'm going with this. Are we spending 80% of our practice time on the biggest needle movers, the things that happen most frequently in games? And are we okay getting our kids, our players, our team to be masters of the big needle movers rather than so-so at everything? Now, notice I didn't say we should spend 100% of our time on the big needle movers. There's still that 20%, so we can cover those less frequent plays. But as we move through a season, and definitely at the end of the season, we should be able to say, yes, we were close to 80%, give or take, with regard to how much of our practice time went toward developing hitters that have a quality hitting plan, pitchers that throw strikes, a defense that makes the routine plays and throws the ball accurately, and base runners that are aggressive while making very few mistakes, calculated aggressiveness on the base path. So I wanted to share that with you, flipping the 80-20 rule upside down, turning around the 80-20 rule. 80% of our practice time, our training time, should be spent on those things that happen the most frequently in a game. Be careful not to use a small sample size when it comes to determining what happens most often. You want to use a big sample size of games. And for the most part, we've all played or seen enough baseball to have a good idea what the big needle movers are, how the 80-20 principle applies to training and games, etc. So, episode 250. Email me. Let me know how you're doing. Let me know about your coaching journey. Send me any questions you have. Send me your thoughts on a possible podcast topic you'd like me to cover. Also, email me a name or names of somebody you would like to see where you think would be a good fit to have come on the show. All right, everyone. Always great to be here with all of you, the 80-20 baseball community. Let's keep taking care of our health so we can be at our best for our family, our close friends, and our players. Let's take this information out there to the field, out there to the training environment, and let's put it into play. Trust it, set up the process, work the process, trust the process, and over time, assess the process, adjust the process, and keep doing your thing. Big shout out to all of you for being coaches. That's something to hang your hat on at the end of the day. That's something to be very proud of. And being a coach is something we'll all look back on to varying degrees, but we're all going to look back on it years and years from now while we're sitting there on those rocking chairs in front of the Cracker Barrel in our early 90s, proud of ourselves for being coaches and putting that time in and giving back. So thank you, all of you, for being coaches. And now let's keep getting better each and every week as coaches. All right, y'all take care now. Until next week, adios.
This has been the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.